First thing I had was, like in the morning, Venkat started that we should aim to be a polyglot programmer. We should not be constrained with just one language. What are the two other languages which our panelists feel, apart from Java? I assume most of the people here are Java programmers. So I'll start maybe with Naresha. What do you think would be the, two other languages according to you, which are interesting to learn for all of us here?
Before I answer that, by the time during when I was graduating, generally my opinion was that you should choose one language. So I would summarize it as the idea was like flirt with all but marry only one.
Oh.
But then,
does your wife know about this?
Or we can say flirt with all and marry with none.
You know where he's going to sleep for the rest of the week.
But then recently I realized that that's not the reality. You have to, work with multiple programming languages. So.
You need to think before you choose analogies.
So, today I would say one would be Groovy, which offers a lot of productivity benefits. That's why you could pick Groovy as one of the languages. And my second pick would be still in JVM would be Clojure. So Clojure is more, coming from functional paradigm, and I think it would be good option for a certain set of problems. So my pick would be these.
Maybe next can be Deepak.
So the question was other than Java?
Other than Java.
Okay, so but if you're not using Java, then so I don't use Java at all. So I'll try to answer it by saying that Groovy is my primary language, so other than, I'll try to answer it by saying that other than Groovy.
All right.
Yeah.
So you have three choices now.
Yes. So of course, other than Groovy, if I have to go back, start my career again, I have to choose one language, probably it would be JavaScript, because of the ubiquity that it runs on the server, runs on the browser, and just that there's so much momentum around it these days. Apart from Groovy, JavaScript, I'll probably look at Python or Ruby, but I'm not sure. But I don't know about these languages, but I think that these are good languages from the code samples that I've seen. They look pretty readable. There is good community around them. There is adoption around them. And there are people who, thought leaders speaking good about them. So apart from Groovy, JavaScript, I'll probably look at Python or Ruby.
All right. Thanks, Deepak. Kunal, what would be your thought?
This is working. Anyways, I am quite loud any which ways. So, for those, if the question is from the perspective of Java developers, and if they have to start another language, Groovy is definitely the one that I would highly recommend that you start with that. That gives you a hang of how duck typing in Groovy works. You can still latch on to your type safety whenever you want to, but get a good sense of how dynamic nature of language, meta programming and things can be done. Otherwise, Ruby is also a good option, but this is one side of languages. Now it depends on the type of person you are or what type of language you choose. But I would highly recommend Scala because it opens up a different way to look at type safety. Because we usually assume type safety means a lot of boilerplate code, and that's not the case with Scala. So you definitely give it at least one shot and see at it. Just to get a perspective, I personally have coded in Scala. I don't like it much, but I'm openly saying that it is very good language to look at. It is complicated language, but yes, if you are not type safe kind of person, I would say try JavaScript because it is very loose language and you can mold it, and there are potential pitfalls that you should watch around for. I am currently working on a lot on JavaScript and CoffeeScript, which is transfer layer for JavaScript. So I'm not directly using JavaScript, but CoffeeScript. But the ubiquity is the key thing there, that whatever way you are coding for browser, for server, or any middleware, it still works. So those are my options.
Thanks, Kunal. Venkat.
So I think we got some really good advice, both on social life and as well as on programming. So I want to, rather than reiterating that, which were really good advices, I'll take a slightly different view on this. So let's leave out the languages for a minute. Let's say we're not interested in picking another language. Then what should we really look at? So one of the things that I realize is either you love static typing or you hate static typing. And I think both of those views are completely flawed. We cannot love it, we cannot hate it. It's practical in certain ways, but at the same time, there are limits to it. So from that angle, if you are interested in static typing, and if all that you have done is program in languages like Java, you really don't know what static typing really is. So like what Kunal said, you want to go look at languages that do implement fairly good static typing. So from that point of view, I would say, spend some really good time looking through Haskell. Because when you look at Haskell, Scala really takes a lot of its static typing from Haskell, and Haskell implements what's called polymorphic type. And polymorphic type, it's really insane even to use the word generics, because Java has completely corrupted generics. But it's really where you can define a particular type, but the real type is inferred on a context at compile time, and it really opens your mind how that works. But more important, while Haskell is statically typed, 90% of the time, you would never actually say what the type is. It feels like being in real love, right? You don't have to say it explicitly, right? You get it, right? And that is kind of the way you feel. It's like, wow, it's statically typed, but I don't. In a really good statically typed language, you actually do a lot less typing with your fingers. And that is one of the things you will see in Haskell. Then when you say, okay, all right, we looked at static typing, but what about metaprogramming? Well, if something like metaprogramming is interesting to you, definitely Groovy offers metaprogramming, but Groovy's metaprogramming has been built and rebuilt over years. But then you go look at metaprogramming in Ruby and you see how clean it is laid out in front of you. And JavaScript has metaprogramming. Python has metaprogramming. Almost any language that's dynamically typed today has metaprogramming. On the other hand, Scala says, well, we'll give you a limited metaprogramming by having implicit classes and implicit functions, and that's just a different take on it. But not only that, you look at compile-time metaprogramming, you don't have to use something as complex as AST transformations or aspect J, but you could use something like AST transformation. So that gives you a very different angle. And a third thing to look at is, hey, if you're doing multi-threading, if you're doing concurrency, how difficult it really becomes to deal with managed state, shared mutability. Well, then you start looking at STM, software transactional memory. And Haskell introduced software transactional memory, and Clojure has STM on the JVM. Multiverse is a library on that provides STM on JVM. And then you realize, oh, look, we don't have to suffer through the shared mutability. We could use something like STM. Or you say, well, I really want to isolate my mutability. Well, it turns out Erlang implemented the actor-based model, and Scala took Erlang's actor-based model, and then Akka and Scala implemented really well. And there are so many libraries on the JVM that does actor-based concurrency. So to me, the languages are not gateways to syntax. Languages are gateways to paradigms, different styles, different thought process. And so the reason we want to go look at these languages is not to see what kind of syntax they provide, because that's the least interesting parts of languages. The idioms the languages provide, the way they bend your mind, the type of style of programming you start implementing with them, And then you can come back and say, well, that's all great, but how can I do any of those on the languages, in the languages that I'm programming? And almost every single one of them I talked about, you can actually do it from Java. But it's just that you have to start reaching out to different libraries and different styles of programming. I think that's the real fun part. So rather than looking for a language, look for styles, paradigms, idioms, and say, and also pick a language that's so very different. The language that you are picking up should hurt your mind. It should make you cry. To me, learning is like peeling an onion. There are two reasons why I compare it to peeling an onion. One, when you peel an onion, I don't know why you would do this, but if you peel an onion, there are more layers to peel. And then you peel some more, there's more layers to peel, right? And then until you get to the real small, part of it, there's layers to peel. But there's one other thing that happens when you peel onion. What is that? You cry. If you're not crying enough, you're not learning, right? And that's why it's like peeling the onion. You need to have that both the experiences are important, I think.